Rain drips heavily on the roof of an old barn against the backdrop of a gray, cloudy sky. The living dead hang around the wooden, flimsy structure, looking for victims. A man is desperately knocking on the door outside, trying to escape from the bloodthirsty creatures, screaming for someone to open it for him. The screams of the person outside make the frightened people sitting inside even more terrified. Three schoolboys are holding the barn door, preventing the person from entering. A blonde girl comes to the aid of the man knocking on the door. He is their classmate, and they cannot leave him. One of the guys holding the door objects, arguing that the door is full of zombies and that their classmate has most likely already been bitten, making it extremely dangerous to let him in. The blonde stands her ground, declaring that she takes responsibility for the consequences of helping her classmate. He is still talking, which means he is not infected and should be allowed in if they still have a conscience. The guys agree that as soon as one of them opens the door and lets the classmate in, the other will immediately close it. As soon as the door opens, one of the angry zombies immediately leaks inside in search of food. The people standing inside watch in horror as the dead man attacks one of the guys holding the door. It turns out that the classmate knocking on the door is a zombie. He is infected and aggressive. He pounces on the main character and presses him to the floor with his weight. The guy trying to defend himself from the dead man puts his hand forward and the zombie immediately bites him on the forearm. Brandon seems to be experiencing a sense of déjà vu. A moment of realization hits him, and everyone runs in panic. Even more monsters break into the barn, and the main character has to saw off his infected hand. Brandon lies in a high-tech capsule. The switch connected to his device is switched. Brandon abruptly finds himself back in the moment when the classmate knocks on the door, screaming. Trying to come to his senses, he freezes, still holding the door with the guys. Jessica, the girl, again asks to let the person standing behind the door in to help him, since he is their classmate. Brandon is amazed to see Jessica young again. She stands her ground persistently, ordering them to let her classmate into the barn with them. The guy remembers this day forever, and now he is finally here. The mechanic made it so that he would come back and change everything. He objects to Jessica, explaining that there are a lot of zombies outside, and his classmate has most likely already been bitten. She confidently claims that if anything goes wrong, she will take care of everything. Brandon agrees with her and steps away from the door, moving closer to the girl. He bows theatrically and invites Jessica to open the door herself. The others watching their altercation are silent, waiting for Jessica's answer. The indignant elder asks which of them is the man and tries to appeal to the guy's conscience, to which he only giggles. Brandon states that people like her can only talk pompously and always leave the dirty work to others to ultimately take all the glory for themselves, bluntly calling her hypocritical. Insulted, Jessica undertakes to do everything herself because she has never been afraid of anything and is not afraid now. Pushing aside the guys holding the door, she goes to the entrance and tells them to move aside and calls them cowards. She only manages to put her hand on the door handle, about to open it, when an infected and already pretty battered classmate of the guys bursts in. The guys in a panic realize that the door has swung open. The door falls to the floor from the force of the blow from the sharply opened door. Jessica falls painfully to the floor and tries to come to her senses. In the doorway, a zombie looms over her, who was once their classmate, a healthy person. The frightened guys in the room realize that he is infected and tremble with fear, attempting to escape from the monster. The head man clings to one of the guys. They are at a dead end and have nowhere to run. In a panic, she pushes one of the guys straight towards the zombies to save herself. Brandon decisively kicks her in the side, pushing her straight towards the dead man. He grins contentedly as he watches the blonde being captured by the hungry ogre. Having grabbed the victim, the zombie opens its mouth wide, preparing to bite off part of its flesh. But unexpectedly, Brandon saves her by piercing the dead man's head with a heavy wrench he had prepared in advance. Blood from the blow gushes onto the pale and frightened Jessica, while Brandon's face expresses calm. Still grabbed by the monster, the girl falls to the ground with his lifeless body pressed against the corpse. She desperately asks the standing guy for help, hoping he will free her. He's been bullied by Jessica all his life, and now he thinks it's her turn to be on the other side. Picking up the door from the floor, he puts it in place, ignoring the questions and screams of the lying blonde. Brandon orders the others to stop standing around and help him barricade the door. Together, they put a lot of weight on it so that no one else can enter. Jessica is actively knocking outside and hysterically ordering them to let her in. Inside, not paying attention to her cries, the guys are intently holding the barricade. At dawn, the girl stops screaming and banging on the door and disappears. Classmates behind Brandon's back begin to whisper and discuss his actions. Turning sharply to them, the main character scares the guys, who are already on the verge of a nervous breakdown. When asked if they are afraid of him, they answer in the negative, albeit unconvincingly. One of the guys holding the door thanks him, saying that if it weren't for Brandon, he would have died because of Jessica. The others agree that the girl deserves such a fate because everyone would have died because of her. Fortunately, Brandon reacted quickly. Otherwise, they would have had big problems. He smiles at the guys and asks them to open the door so he can go outside and look around. They ask him again, in fear, not quite understanding whether this is what he means. He explains that it was really mean of him to kick the girl out, and he would like to go out and see if she's alive. Having met with a refusal, he angrily and loudly shouts for them to open the door. It works, and having removed the load from the path, the door is moved to the side, giving the guy passage. Brandon calmly walks outside with the proverbial red wrench slung over his shoulder. Taking a couple of steps away from the barn, he notices that the prefect and their zombie classmate are nowhere to be found. Shielding himself from the sun with his hand, he assumes that the zombies have left because of the dawn. The door behind him closes sharply and with a loud bang, cutting off the path to the shelter. He hears them barricading themselves inside, believing that he is a bastard and too dangerous. Who knows who he will kick out next time? In response to this, Brandon just grins and moves on with the wrench. Seeing this through the window, the guys are excited by his action. They are stunned that the guy has no intention of returning to the barn and wonder where he has gone. One of the guys notices that a walking dead man in a red dress is approaching the guy. They see him walking straight at the zombie without trying to run away and consider him sick. The walking dead this time is a woman in a red dress with an outstretched neck. Brandon grins and flips the wrench in his hand to get a better grip for the fight. He leans his whole body forward for a wide swing and a good dead man's blow. His classmates do not expect him to rush forward, which confuses them. Swinging vigorously, he crushes the monster's head with a sweeping blow. His classmates, seeing this, freeze in horror. They break out in a cold sweat from such cruelty and call him crazy. Tiredly leaning on the wrench, he hangs over the corpse and breathes heavily. From the pieces of the crushed head, he takes out a green ball, light emanating faintly from it. This is energy black gold, the source of doomsday and an indispensable item for mechanics. At this time, a dead old man in a white t-shirt and trousers approaches him from the side. With a flourish, he kills him too, cutting off his head with the wrench. Observing this, his classmates note that he has changed a lot. Just recently, he was a timid and inconspicuous guy. Some girls cry from fear, and the guys never cease to be surprised by the sudden changes in Brandon's behavior. One of them offers to let him back in so he can help them fight against zombies, but the second immediately argues with him, saying that Brandon is crazy and unpredictable. At this moment, the window is broken with a wrench, and Brandon threateningly asks if they are going to sit there, suggesting that they go kill the dead because it is so much fun. They manage to shout to him that there is a dead man behind him, a man in a suit that is already pretty shabby. Brandon manages to push him away and smash his head with a wrench. With a wide swing, the corpse falls to the ground, splashing blood everywhere and staining the guy himself. Initially, the main character wanted to go with his classmates, but given that he can mutate, he decides to part with them here, admitting that he does not intend to harm them. In parting, he expresses the hope that this time they would all be able to survive. They didn't expect the guy to leave like that, so for a couple of minutes, silence reigned in the room. Doomsday is the beginning of the end of humanity. The zombie virus has swept the entire world, infecting 50% of the population and causing complete economic and political collapse. The number of zombies grew every day, and people living in fear and despair fought each other for living space and food, plunging into endless anarchy. A professor who was considered an expert on zombies called this time the Dark Age. Because of the Elder's actions, zombies bit Brandon's hand, and then he had to amputate it in order to survive. After this, the suffering did not end. He had to wander, starve, and endure violence for 50 years until he met a mechanic who, with the last of his strength before his death, sent him back in time to the moment when everything was just beginning. The men watching the guy at this time are surprised by the schoolboy's carefree gait, suggesting that he was mad with hunger and decided he had nothing to lose. One has the idea of inviting him inside, but the second is against it, fearing that the guy might already be infected. Brandon approaches the playground where the dead are swarming, hanging around colorful buildings. The creatures that notice his presence run after him in an attempt to eat him. One of the observers notices this. The second only grumbles that this is not the best time to look for food. The main character deftly fends off a zombie attack by waving the wrench. Amazed, male observers note the brutality of Brandon's fight. Another spectator, a woman, irritably vows to kill him sooner or later. The zombies continue to approach the guy, and there are more and more of them. Brandon begins to run away from the zombies, swearing that because of the noise, they are being chased like this. People watching him through the window realize that he is running towards them. He actively knocks on the roller shutters, asking to be let inside. Noticing the CCTV camera, he looks straight into the lens and reports that he is wounded and that monsters are chasing him. The old man believes that after stirring up the crowd, even the least intelligent person will not open the door for him. Around the corner, the figure of a dead man appears, running after the victim. The guy in the suit fights off the dead man with practiced blows. With ragged strikes, he tries to fend off the rest of the crowd of monstrous creatures, including women and men, all searching for food. Brandon manages to slip through a small gap in the roller shutters from below. As the blinds close behind him, the dead hammer on the metal, their prey escaping before their very eyes. The main character gets up from the floor and realizes he is in a supermarket building. There are goods on the shelves, mostly food, hidden behind the cash register. A girl with bows in her hair quietly watches him. The guys at the window discuss Brandon and his fierce fight for survival against the creatures. One of them turns to 𝗧𝗴𝗵𝗵, telling him how the guy dealt with 6 zombies alone and was able to get into the store across the street. An intrigued man sitting on a kind of throne makes the assumption that apparently zombies are not so strong. If the schoolboy could do it, then they can too. The leader of the gang of men thinks about Brandon at the store. Brandon notices movement behind the register and orders the girl out. He also demands that she quickly give him the remote control for the roller door, putting his palm forward demandingly. Without waiting for an answer, he sighs heavily, tired and dirty, covered in the blood of monsters. He puts on a show, pretending to suffer from an open wound and asking for help. The girl runs out to him, her legs covered with plaster and herself dressed only in a large shirt. Brandon grabs her right arm tightly with his dirty palm, demanding that she give him the remote control in exchange for freedom from his tight grip. The frightened girl tries to pretend she does not understand which remote control he is talking about. Noticing the remote control in her other hand, Brandon tries to take it from her. A guy viciously kicks one of the food racks with a dirty sneaker, calling the girl stupid and berating her for believing his lies about the injury. Brandon lies on a dirty bed, with the girl in a shirt over him. While bandaging, Brandon clenches his jaw in pain, tensing his whole body. After this torment, he awkwardly thanks her for saving his life. She says that it is very dangerous outside, and that is why her father told her to stay in the store. The girl tells the guy to rest on the bed while she brings food. Lying alone, he thinks about how he came such a long way, and only she decided to open the doors and let him in. There is a scream from below. The girl asks what they are doing here and shouts a request not to pass by and leave a comment under this video. Good luck to you, my beloved YouTube viewer. The man with a rising smile thanks the girl for opening the door for them. The girl, frozen in horror, thinks that they were simply dying of hunger. They deceitfully deceived her to get to the products in her store. The girl states that her father will return soon, but the man says that they have already met him and decided to use her as bait to distract the zombies. Licking his lips disgustingly, he says that there are only them here and no one will bother them while she is being brutally tortured. Brandon, meanwhile, just sits scared in the corner, trying not to make sounds so as not to be caught. She is tortured and killed, all because of excessive kindness. Back then, he could only hide in that corner in fear, but now he is determined to repay the debt and be sure to save her.